Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier classes, we have completed the discussion on two units of chapter 1 in the business economics paper. The first unit of chapter 1 was focusing more on the definition of economics, the two different branches of economics, micro and macro. At the same time, understanding the usefulness of business economics and where the business economics will try to help the organizations in solving many internal and external issues. These were all some of the areas which we discussed in chapter 1, unit 1. And in the same chapter, unit 2 was more about the different types of economic systems, namely capitalist economy, socialist economy, and mixed economy, and how they will try to solve the fundamental economic questions, central economic problem related to any society, again, namely what to produce, how much to produce, which is part of that, then how to produce, that is a technology issue, for whom to produce, related to the target customers, and how much provision should be made for future growth, namely savings and investments. These key decisions will be taken by any economy, any country, any society. But the question is how they take. Are they taking using capitalistic principles or market economic principles? Or are they doing using socialistic principles or command economy principles? So capitalist economy is more of a market economy. Socialist economy is more of a command economy or controlled economy, which will have a central planning authority. And what are all the features of different types of economies and what are their advantages as well as disadvantages? How they will be beneficial to the society and how they could be harmful to the society also. Both sides of the coins we have discussed in chapter 1, unit 2 of business economics paper. Now today let us discuss the questions which are given in the ICA material, the multiple choice questions, and let us see the answers for them. At the same time, also understand the technique of answering multiple choice questions because we have this examination of business economics being conducted only on MCQ basis. So we need to understand some of the techniques in answering such questions also. All questions cannot be approached in the same manner. Most of the times what happens is students will end up in actually marking the wrong answers in spite of knowing the right answer. That is the very tragic situation. If somebody doesn't know the right answer, that's a different story. But in spite of knowing the right answer, in spite of having the reasonable knowledge which is sufficient for passing the exam, still students fail. And that goes majorly due to negligence, the major contribution. And second thing, psychological factors, where the approach of answering the questions could itself be unscientific or wrong approach. That is why knowing the subject is one part, using that subject for obtaining the best marks is another part. Both are definitely linked to each other, no doubt. But we cannot say just by knowing the subjects automatically we can get into good scores or vice versa. Just because somebody got a good score, we cannot even say that they really have that much subject knowledge. So they are related to each other also, at the same time they are not related to each other also. If they are not related to each other, that is a problem. They should be related to each other. That is why we always say concepts should be equal to results. When we have better concepts, when we understand the things better way, result should automatically come. And that should not be any problem in obtaining the marks once we know and understand the things in a clear manner. That is also part of the learning process. So that is one of the other things that we will try to understand. Of course, in each chapter, each subject, wherever MCQs are there, these techniques will be applicable. These techniques will be useful, but we will apply that as a first chapter. Now, what are the types of questions which can be asked and how to answer them? What should be our approach of answering them? Let us understand that in today's session. Let us start with the MCQs straight away. These are the questions which are given in the essay material. There can be hundreds of any other questions which can be framed also. That is not at all a problem. However, majorly, if we understand the subject and if we understand how to answer the questions, that automatically enables us, or it will prepare us, it will empower us for answering any type of question that might be encountered in the main examination. Not that same question in the same sequence it will come. Wordings could be different, the way the question framed is different, possibly our answers options could be different. So don't ever try to by heart the question and answers. I know some people do that. That is the worst possible thing that anybody can do. And if anybody does that, you are doing a disservice to yourself. Never do that. And very unfortunately, some questions tell that you can by heart these questions and answers. To save time, they say all these nonsensical excuses. But still, that is the worst thing that anybody can do is remembering the questions. No, we should never remember the questions. All that you should remember are the terminology. All that you should have in the brain is the concept of each area which has been discussed in the class. That should be the approach rather than just remembering the questions and answers. That will be the worst approach if that is followed. So what we follow is a very logical approach, scientific approach, rational approach, and conceptual approach, which will help us and which will empower us in solving any type of question in the examination, not only these 20-30 questions. These are only for understanding purposes, not that there is a question bank and that bank is more important. That question bank is only for practice always. Which bank is important? Knowledge bank is important. That should be in our brain. So understand the difference between just having the knowledge and having the ability to convert that knowledge into answering of the questions. Both should be put together used. One riding over the other will never give good result. That is why concepts is equal to results. If concepts only will be discussed without having the result, no use. If results are only discussed or results are only aimed at without knowing the concepts, still no use. So both of them are useless. If they are equal, if they are balanced both sides, then only we can say that is a good learning process, and we will try to understand how to implement that process in the first chapter MCQs. First and foremost thing in MCQs, for that matter any question, but MCQs we are particularly talking about, is reading the question and options very carefully. First mistake lot of people do is they are in hurry. Hurry for what? To complete the answer sheet and get the marks and pass the examination as quickly as possible. Naturally, because everybody wants to pass the exam, but you cannot pass the exam because your mind is willing to pass the exam quickly. That is not possible. You will pass the exam when you put the right answers. So that has to be understood. A lot of people miss this small logic. They are so much in hurry that they want to clearly write all the answers as quickly as possible and get out of the examination hall and feel very satisfied. Oh, we did a fantastic job. That psychology will not work. We have to take reasonable time. We should not take more time, because if you take too much time, that will be dangerous also, because time sufficiency also we have to take into consideration. So, but in general, this paper, if somebody says that economics and BCK paper also time was not sufficient, I mean that's something to be thought about. Maybe they are not even fit for this course, I would say, because this is the probably the easiest paper. So definitely time should be sufficient. So when it is sufficient, what should we do? We should make use the best use of it. So read the question very carefully, reasonably slowly, not in hurry, not just to jump and quickly to answer the question. That should not be the idea. Idea should be to answer correctly, not idea should be answer quickly. That is the difference. Idea is to answer correctly. Quickly, that will come with practice. Anyway, it will come with practice. So, without practicing on a normal day, suddenly on the examination day, we want to do the things quickly, we will fall down. If you participate in a running race without practicing on a daily basis, you will definitely fall down in that running race. So, don't run or don't try to chase the speed. Speed will only come when you practice more and more, when you read more and more. then only speed will come. Speed will not come on one day. But answering correctly definitely requires subject knowledge. So that is why using reasonable pace, you have to read the question very carefully, and also all the options very carefully you have to read, and make sure every answer that we are marking is correct answer. That has to be the idea all the time in mind whenever we are answering the question. So look at the first question. What it says is, the economists regard decision making as important. Of course, definitely decision making is important, no doubt about it. He's telling because of what? Because of what? Let us see one by one. Option number A. The resources required to satisfy our unlimited wants and needs are finite or scarce. Yes, absolutely true. So should we go for A without reading others? That could be wrong. This is where the hurry student, the person who wants to quickly answer and move on to next question, will get a problem. A definitely is a correct option, no doubt. Correct option does not mean it is the correct answer. The correct statement does not mean it is the correct answer. So always there is a difference here. So correct statement, true, false, all these things are different. Correct answer, wrong answer is different. And the computer which is valuing will never know what is your knowledge by entering into your brain. It will only know what is the correct answer. If it is yes, then it will give the mark. If it is no, it will give the negative mark. So be very careful. Don't jump to the conclusions. First statement is fantastic, no doubt about it. It is correct. The resources required to satisfy our unlimited wants and needs are finite or scarce, because of which we have to take decisions. Because resources are limited, wants are unlimited. You cannot use the resources for satisfying any want. So you need a rationing. You need to take some decisions. Definitely that is one of the reasons. First point correct. But may or may not be the correct answer. We have to still further read through all the other statements. Let us go to statement B. It is crucial to understand how we can best allocate our scarce resources to satisfy the society's unlimited wants and needs. Also more or less similar. Is it not important to allocate the scarce resources to satisfy the society's unlimited wants and needs? Absolutely yes. That is also true. C also says the resources have alternative uses. Looks like that is also true. When all of them are true, so naturally what will be the correct answer here? That is going to be D. That is, all the above are correct. Resources are limited, wants are unlimited. Allocation of scarce resources to satisfy the society's unlimited wants and needs is the purpose for which the decision making works. And resources sometimes have alternate uses, and it has to be decided. For example, coal is there. It can be used for power generation also. It can be used for running the trains also. It can be used for any other industry also. For which purpose it has to be used, the decision is required. When the same resource has alternative uses, then decision making would be required, and decision making definitely involves all the three of them. So definitely all the three are correct statements. So the correct answer is D, Delhi. That is all the above. That is the answer for first question. So what is the lesson that you should learn from this question is, you need to read the question carefully, and you should not jump to the answer without reading all the four options, especially where all of the above is one of the options. Definitely you have to go through all of the options available, because this is a situation where possibly all of them could be the answers. Maybe or may not be the answers also, but you have to read through each and every sentence, each and every option. That is the lesson we can learn from question number 1. Question number 2. Business economics is, and it is giving a lot of different types of options. A, he says abstract, and it applies the tools of microeconomics. Business economics is abstract, is saying, and applies the tools of microeconomics. B, involves practical application of economic theory in business decision making. Definitely looks like the correct option, because that's what business economics is all about. Application of economic theory in business decision making. Yes, B definitely looks like a correct option. C looks like also correct option, because incorporates the tools from multiple disciplines. Yes. So for this, answering this question, what you should know already, what are the characteristics of business economics, features of business economics, which we discussed in Unit 1 of Chapter 1, that we should have studied first, remembered first. then we can answer this question correctly. Here looks like B also is correct, C also is correct. And answer is there is a D which says B and C above. When both are correct, we cannot put B also, C also. Though it is correct, but it is not the correct answer. It may be a correct statement, but still not correct answer. Correct answer is what? Both B and C above. Then naturally we have to eliminate A here because the word used here is abstract. Is business economics abstract? Definitely not. Business economics is not abstract. Why is that? Abstract means, generally abstract is the word used for pure sciences, which are only talking about some theories without any application. But business economics is not like that. Business economics is an application oriented subject. That is why it is more pragmatic in nature, it is more practical in nature, not an abstract science or not some abstract concept, not some mythical theories only it is going to tell. Of course, there are theories, but those are more concrete. So, what is the opposite of abstract is concrete. Is business economics giving us concrete solutions to the problems of an organization, both internal and external? Absolutely, yes. So, you cannot call business economics as an abstract concept. That would be wrong statement. So A cannot be considered as a correct statement. But A also has a partly correct because applies the tools of microeconomics. Yes, this is correct. But just because of that, A cannot be a correct option because the word used is abstract. Another point. So another way of looking at this question. Let us say some of us don't know what is the meaning of abstract. Everybody is not expert of English, quite natural. So we don't know whether A is correct or not, but looks like correct only because it is half correct, no, at least it is business economics applies the tools of microeconomics, it says. So definitely for a normal brain, without knowing the word meaning of abstract, A looks like a correct answer. B is where our knowledge area should be giving us a clear indication. B definitely is the correct option. Why? Because this is what basically is the definition of business economics. It is always about application of economic theory in the business decision making. So B is 100% correct option, no doubt about it. A also looks like a correct option. C is also a correct option, definitely, because we know that business economics is multidisciplinary. It incorporates the tools from different disciplines. It uses the mathematics also, statistics also, econometrics also, operations research also, different disciplines. Financial management principles are applied here, many things are applied here. So definitely C also looks like a correct answer. Actually A, B, C all three look like correct answer for somebody who doesn't understand the meaning of the word abstract. So we cannot make an excuse that are abstract, I don't know what is abstract, so I got a wrong answer. No, that is a wrong of my psychology. Once again, I know B and C are correct. This requires knowledge. Abstract understanding or not understanding the word abstract is not knowledge. That could be depending upon our understanding of English, that is different. But knowing B and C are definitely part of business economics, that is knowledge of economics. If somebody has this, nobody can stop them from putting the option D, because when you know that A is something doubtful because of our lack of understanding of the word abstract, when B and C are guaranteed that they are going to be the answers, definitely the correct answer going to be B and C both above, which excludes A. So we give the abstract completely and exit from our options because we don't know it also. Even if we don't know it also, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We don't have to put a correct option. We don't have to put something like A and B and C, all three, because that option is not available. If at all somebody says that, I don't know what is abstract, but I think that is also business economics. Okay, then show me the option. Now here, where is it? A, B, C above, all of the above, if it is there, then you can say you got confused. Then you can say, in fact, if without the word abstract, just if it says business economics applies the tools of microeconomics and B and C as it is, then all of the above would be the correct answer. So one word abstract, just because whether we know it or not know it, my point is, should not make any difference in answering the question. Why? Because anybody who understands business economics will definitely know that these two are correct. That is for sure. B and C are definitely going to be correct. That is for sure. So only doubt is where? Doubt is in A. When B and C are definitely correct, A we don't know, let us say, then correct option is happening, definitely going to be D only, which is B and C above, because A is not at all an option here. So leave apart A, B and C are only the correct answer, correct correct options. So the correct answer here is D, that is Delhi. In this case, both B and C above will be correct. Like that, our thought process has to guide us in putting and selecting the correct answers. Lot of times it so happens we may not be able to understand the English that is used in the questions. Possible. I'm not saying always happens, but it is quite possible. Then we cannot say that I don't know this word because of which I don't know the answer. Those are all excuses. That is what failures will talk. Those who are going to be successful will dissect the question. They will understand, what is this question talking about? What is that we know 100%? So our knowledge area should be so solid that remaining which we don't know should not matter. Here, abstract we don't know, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, the answers B and C, if you know that they are correct, definitely D is going to be the correct option, because anyway there is no option of A, B and C put together in any of the other alternatives. So the point of answering D should be emanating from our knowledge, not from our lack of knowledge. That is what is the point I want to make. So understand that carefully, that what we learn here, we should not be carried away with the misunderstanding or inability to understand any words in any question. We should focus more on our strength, not on our weakness. Our strength is knowing these B and C. This definitely everybody should know. This will not come automatically. For this you have to read. For this you have to read. For knowing abstract, probably yes, you might need background, English medium background since childhood. Maybe you need some more understanding. Then it's possible. So nobody can lose marks or fail chartered accountancy exams because of lack of English knowledge. That is for sure. Because of lack of knowledge, somebody can fail. Lack of English knowledge, nobody should fail, if proper logic is applied. That's it. If not, we will always take excuses and moan about, I don't know this word, I don't know that word, this option is confusing, that option is not able to be understood. All these things we'll see. We'll see the places where we cannot get any solution. We will not look at the places where we get the answer. So that is where exactly our perspective matters. There are ultimately in MCQs 4 options only, boss. There is no other option. There are only 4 options. In that, only one is going to be correct. In the answers, final examination, only one is going to be correct. No other option. No. So all that you need to do is, you need to eliminate 3 wrong answers. For that, you need a little bit of thought process, logic, and common sense. Most importantly, common sense. And just common sense will not help. Subject knowledge definitely is required. So reasonable subject knowledge, which can be acquired only by reading or listening, understanding the concepts, should be applied in the MCQs with a positive approach. Then definitely the concepts will be converted into results. That's what we should apply. Not just know, but we should apply also. Now let us look at question number 3. In economics, we use the term scarcity. What do you mean by scarcity? Scarcity means what? Absolute scarcity and lack of resources in less developed countries. Does economics say less developed countries only have scarcity and all developed countries do not have scarcity? Is it like that? Definitely not. So A is wrong. B says relative scarcity means scarcity in relation to the wants of the society. Yes, definitely. Whenever economics talks about scarcity, scarcity is not an absolute scarcity. It is a relative scarcity. Means what? When compared with the wants of the society, the resources are scarce. Not that resources are scarce by themselves. Wants are so high and resources are available, resources are so less. That's what relative scarcity means, and that's what economics talks about. And other two, definitely also we should look through them, and not with an idea of finding out the answer, because we found the answer already, which looks like almost the correct answer in our thought process. Then what we should go with C and D, quickly we should go through them to eliminate them only. But if you just don't read C and D also, that will be wrong. That will be not a correct approach. Read them and eliminate them quickly in your brain. Oh, okay, no, this is not what economics talking. Is economics talking about scarcity during business failure and natural calamities? Did we ever talk about that? Is that what economics talks? Definitely absolute rubbish. No, that is wrong. Scarcity caused on account of excessive consumption by the rich. There is never a talk of rich and poor in economics. That is different. Maybe people having different positions in the society, that is reality. But economics doesn't talk about scarcity which is caused because rich people are consuming more. These are all both nonsensical statements. Never economics has touched these two items at all. So absolutely A, C, D, all three are wrong answers. So B is the correct answer, which is actually looking like what we know already also. Relative scarcity, that is the scarcity in relation to the wants of the society. Wants of the society are more, resources are limited. That's what we call it scarcity. If wants are less, resources are more, then there is no scarcity. Or if, for example, the wants are not there, then there is no scarcity. So scarcity happens when the wants are more but resources are less. That's what we are talking about as relative scarcity. Once again, some people will tell, I don't know what is absolute, what is relative. First of all, we should know because we discussed them also. Even if we don't know English words like absolute, relative, abstract, concrete, these words, if at all we don't know, subjective, objective, though we should know. If these things are not known also, from the answers we can find out the correct option, definitely. So for example, this option is talking about less developed countries. Nonsensical. Economics never talked about that. Natural calamities. C. Economics never talked about that. Rich and all, excessive consumption. Economics never talks about that. So basically, A, C, D, and R have definitely nonsensical answers. So only option left is B. So this can be done by elimination. Answering of question number 3 can be done by elimination. I'm talking about the worst possible scenario. If somebody doesn't know what is the meaning of relative scarcity, we should know ideally, then B ideally should be the correct option with knowledge. Even without that also, with common sense we can answer, because these are the things we should know absolutely are wrong statements. The economics never talked about these angles as the central problem of economics. So scarcity is the word which we are talking about. Never we talked about any particular case. It is in general, any society, any type of economy, any type of countries will face the scarcity, because always the resources available for fulfilling the wants will be limited only. That's what economics talks about. It never talked about less developed countries, business failure and natural calamities, rich and poor and all these things never were talked about in economics when the context of scarcity comes. So naturally, B, Bombay is the correct answer. We're talking about relative scarcity. That is the answer for third question. That is B, Bombay. Then answer for fourth question, let us see. What implications does resource scarcity have for the satisfaction of wants? Okay, let us see. Fourth question says, resources are scarce, definitely yes. Because of which, what happens to the satisfaction of wants is asking. What implications it will have? Option A is not all wants can be satisfied. That is clear, no? Because when resources are scarce, what happens to the satisfaction of wants? All wants cannot be satisfied. So definitely this looks like a correct answer. But should we just ignore the other three? No. Other three also we should know. We should read and just understand. No, these are all not correct answers. That also should be made sure. So the point to be noted here, initially, while answering these MCQs is, it is important to identify the correct option, no doubt. However, simultaneously, it is also important to identify why the other three are not correct. When both are done simultaneously, that is the perfect answering of any MCQ. So we should know why one option is correct and why the other three options are incorrect. Right? So why B is incorrect? Let us see what implications resource scarcity will have for satisfaction of wants. We will never be faced with the need to make choices. That is absolute opposite actually. When there is scarcity, we need to make choices on a daily basis. Decision making has to be done on a daily basis. So this is exactly opposite of what it is talking about. So absolutely not a correct option. C, we must develop ways to decrease our individual wants. Then that is what is Buddhism and all will tell. Economics will not talk about that. Resources are limited, wants are unlimited. Religious, spiritual, some kind of gurus, babas may tell what? Don't have the wants, reduce the wants and all that they will tell. And we follow it or don't follow it is your individual choice. But definitely that's not what economics tells. Economics is not a spiritual or a psychological science. It is a social science that we have to understand. So social science, what it will talk about? It only talks about there are wants which are unlimited and resources which are limited. How to match them it will think about. It will not say because the resources are unlimited, all the people reduce their wants. That is not the job of economics. We are not telling it is wrong. That is not the job of economics. For that, there is religion, there is other type of spiritual gurus are there who will tell all these things daily to us. So whether we follow or not is a different story. But definitely economics has no role in that arena. So C cannot be the correct option. And then D, new natural resources if we discover, then it will increase the ability to satisfy the wants. Boss, whatever natural resources will come, new resources you find out, no problem. Still your wants will be always more, still the resources will be always less because wants are unlimited, resources are limited. Just because you have some new natural resources does not mean the central economic problem is solved. It will never be solved. The point is the central economic problem of basic problem basically of any society where the wants are unlimited but resources are limited, it can never be solved. Economics also will not solve that. Nobody is telling economics has a magic wand which can solve that. Economics tries to solve that. It cannot solve that because it will forever be there. Forever, that is nature. That is how any society, any economy will work. That is how it will be. And that is irrespective of the type of economy, irrespective of the nature of economy, whether it is capitalist, socialist, mixed economy, everywhere, always this rule is thumb rule in any society. Because your wants are more, resources are less, always, no exceptions. Somebody suddenly found gold also in their country. Also, they are going to become rich, and this problem is not going to be there in that country. No, no, they cannot eat gold. This problem will still be there. Maybe their want is not gold, their want is food. So they may not get food as much as they want, possible. So something else they will have, they want something else. So naturally, there is no guarantee that just by finding new natural resources, wants can be satisfied. So that is also absolutely wrong statement. So B, C, D, all the three are wrong. That is what we should focus on. While learning, we should be very clearly reading them and understanding why they are wrong. But definitely one thing is correct. When the resources are scarce, all wants cannot be satisfied. That is for sure. So A is the correct option, correct answer for question number 4. Then we have question number 5. Which of the following is a normative statement? I told you already. Positive and normative questions always will be asked in the main exam also. You should be able to identify which is a positive statement, which is a normative statement. Positive statements are those which will establish a cause and effect relationship. Normative statements are those which will talk about a value, judgment, an opinion, an advice, suggestion, like that. Positive statements will talk about the facts. Normative statements will talk about a kind of opinion, subjective statements we can call. So let us understand which of these following are normative statements. That means what? By the time already our brain should process this. See, there is only one normative statement in the 4, which means all the other 3 are positive, no? So if you identify 3 positive statements and eliminate them, automatically the 4th one is normative. So elimination also is one of the ways of answering the correctly answering the questions. So let us take one by one. A. Planned economies allocate resources via government departments. It is just a statement. When there is a planned economy, through government departments, the economies will allocate resources. Yes, it is just a statement. Is it a positive statement or a normative statement? It is giving any advice? Is it talking about any judgment, or is it just giving a statement of fact? It is more giving a statement of fact. So definitely it is not a normative statement. It is a positive statement. Same way, most transitional economies have experienced problems of falling output and falling output and rising prices over the past decade. Once again, a statement of fact. What has happened, it is only just mentioned here. What is that? We don't need to worry. Here our idea is not to understand the statements. Our idea is to understand what is the nature of the statements. Is this statement a positive statement or a normative statement? Definitely positive statement, because it is only talking about a fact that economies have experienced some problems, blah blah blah, whatever happened, that really happened, no? So that is a fact. Then C, there is a greater degree of consumer sovereignty in the market economies than planned economies. Once again, statement, that is true, that is a fact. You know that in market economies like capitalist economies, consumer sovereignty will be more than socialist economies or planned economies. So it is once again a statement which is just a matter of fact. not a matter of judgment. Then look at option number D, naturally, which should be the correct option. But why is it a correct option? Understand this word. I think this particular phrase will make it a normative statement. Why is that? Because it is giving a opinion. Reducing the inequality should be a major priority for mixed economies. It is giving an opinion. Should be. It is an advice. It is what it is. Positive statements will tell what it should be, what it ought to be. Which type of statements will tell? Normative statements will tell. So what is the correct option? Naturally now, option D. That is a normative statement because it is giving an opinion or a value judgment. So what it should be, what it ought to be, has to be given by the normative statements. What it is, as it is, that is told by positive statements. That is why A, B, C are positive statements. D, Delhi, is a normative statement. For question number 5, D will be the correct answer because of that. Then question number 6, just for change, has 5 options, A, B, C, D, E. See, practically in the examination you don't find such type of situations, so don't worry about these things. Just read the question, simply go through the options which are available and identify the correct option. Usually in the examination you will have only 4 options, not 5 options. Maybe by mistake they have given this, don't worry. In every economic system, the scarcity imposes limitation on what? Scarcity is applicable and limitations are there on whom? On the households, are there limitations? Yes. On the business firms, are there limitations? Yes. Governments? Yes. Nation as a whole? Yes. So that itself is the answer. Because scarcity is not something which has any exceptions. There is no exception for the scarcity. Nation as a whole will always have scarcity. You cannot say, no, government will not have scarcity. Government, why it will not have scarcity? It will also have scarcity. It has a lot of needs, lot of wants, but it cannot fulfill them. Same way, federal government will not have scarcity. Wrong. Business firms will not have scarcity. They will also have scarcity. So only here E also looks like business firms, governments, and nation as a whole, but households is not there. So definitely households also will have scarcity. So who will have scarcity in an economic system? Simply speaking, everybody. And which option is talking about everybody? Option A is talking about everybody. Households, that is families, which are related to individuals, human beings we are talking. Then business firms, which are organizations. Then governments. And basically the entire nation will have experienced the scarcity automatically. That is the nature of any economy, by the way. Any and every economy will have that scarcity which is spread across throughout the country. Nation as a whole will face scarcity. You cannot say one particular segment is not facing scarcity. Such situation is not possible. Now, answer is A for 6th question. Question number 7, we can call these questions as direct questions. These questions should not take more time. These questions should be just identified. So like directly when you see all of these items, this can be identified only if you have read the subject. Then only it is possible. So macroeconomics is also called as what? Is it applied, aggregate, experimental, none of the above? You should have read this. If you read this, answer is very clear. It is called as aggregate economics because it talks about all aggregates, totals. So we can call that as aggregate economics. Simply answer is B, Bombay, direct option. There is no logic required there. You should know that macroeconomics is an economics of aggregates. So that is option B. Then question number 8, an example of positive economic analysis. Positive analysis, what it will talk about? Once again, it talks about the relationship between the variables. It talks about the cause and effect relationship. That's what the positive economics talks about. Normative economics or normative statements will talk about society, welfare, judgments, betterment of the society. Those things are all normative. Positive is about identifying the theory or theoretical relationship between different variables. So now let us see which of the following are positive economic analysis. First one talks about an analysis of the relationship between price of the food and quantity purchased. Is it an example of positive economic analysis? Absolutely yes. Why? Why is that? Once again, simple logic, because you should know what is a positive economics. Positive, anything actually, positive science. Any positive science will talk about what? Cause and effect. And what is the cause here? Price. Effect is on quantity purchased. When there is a cause and effect relationship between the variables which is established, that's what we call that science as positive science, and which is not establishing that, rather which is giving some value judgments, that is called normative. So let us see, first one definitely is a positive science, positive statement, positive analysis, because there is a cause of one thing, that is price, impact is on quantity purchased, so that relationship is established by positive economic analysis. Answer to question number 8 is A, automatically. Remaining things are not positive economic analysis. Why also, let us understand. Determine how much income each person should be guaranteed. See, where the moment should be comes, it is not positive, it is normative. C. Determining the fair price for food. Once again, what is fair, what is not fair is a judgment. Nobody can tell, oh, this is fair price and all. 40 rupees is fair for 1 kilo of rice. Who knows that? What is the quality of the rice? What is the inflation? Which rupee we are talking about? So all these things will have judgmental things. So fair is not something which is objective. It is always subjective. So that cannot be a positive economic analysis. Fourth point. Deciding how to distribute the output of the economy is also a judgment, a decision. How to distribute depends upon the nature of the society. If it is a socialistic society, it will distribute a little bit more equitably. If it is a capitalistic society, it will distribute in a little unequal way. But ultimately, it is not a relationship of some cause and effect. It is also something which is a judgment, which is a decision that has to be taken by the economies, which means that is also not a positive economic analysis. So D cannot be correct answer. So correct option for 8th question can be only option A. Now, question number 9. A study of how increases in the corporate income tax rate will affect the national unemployment rate. So we are talking about corporate tax rate, unemployment, big things. What are all these things? These are all part of what? Examples of what? Definitely these are all examples of macroeconomics. That is option A. Macroeconomics. Why? These are the things. Simply wherever we see this word, automatically we should identify unemployment, interest rates, inflation, tax. These are all macro concepts. So automatically that is an example of macroeconomics. Definitely all others are not correct. So 9th question answer is A. Then the 10th question, there is actually a direct question, 9th question. 10th question, which of the following does not suggest a macro approach for India? Macro approach, once again, which is not. So another point to note in MCQs, always be careful with negativities in the question. Negations in the questions are very dangerous. Lot of times people ignore them and fall in the trap. Read very carefully. Whenever you are reading the paper also, underline this, not. So which of the following does not suggest a macro approach? Means what we want here is something which is not a macro, which means in the 4 options we need to find out which is a micro, which is not a macro. We don't want what is a macro approach. We want what is not a macro approach. So GNP, for example, is a macro thing. Is it correct answer? No. Finding the causes and failures of ABC Limited. ABC Limited, is it micro or macro? Individuals and organizations is micro. It is not macro. So definitely all others are macro. GNP is the word. Gross national product. Macro concept. Inflation. This word itself tells it is macro. And we are talking about the failure of the industry as a whole, not in relation to one company. Industry as a whole. Automobile industry has removed a lot of people. That is all failure of automobile industry. Macro things. We are not talking about one individual, not talking about one particular company. So these words will make the other 3 options A, C, D related to macro. Only B option, Bombay, that is the point related to one company. Company is not macro. One company, ABC Limited, comes under micro approach. So B is not suggesting a macro approach for India. ABC Limited is not India. It's only one of the companies. So that is a micro thing. So anything related to individuals and organizations is micro. Anything related to the country as a whole is macro. That's what you should understand in a nutshell, which we should already know if we have read the unit 1 of chapter 1 carefully. Then question number 11 has a conversation. So read the statements carefully. Ram, Krishna, Vinod and Madhu are talking about it. And what is the question here in this conversation? What do you want is a normative statement. Who is making the normative statement? We have to find out. Let us see the statements. First, Ram says, my corn harvest this year is poor. Is it a fact or an opinion? He's just telling the fact. So that cannot be normative. Krishnan says, don't worry, price increases will compensate for the fall in quantity supplied. He's giving theories. So is it telling some cause and effect relationships? Definitely yes. Once again, the cause and effect relationship between price and quantity. Price and quantity. This cause and effect relationship is told by Mr. Krishnan. So that is also a positive statement. Then, Vinod is giving philosophical statements. What we can do? Climate affects the crop yields. Some years are bad, others are good. Everybody knows that. But Vinod gave a fantastic statement telling that हम क्या कर सकते हैं, जो भी है हो जाता है. So he says what we can do. Some years are good, some years are bad. But is it some opinion? Is it some kind of judgment he is passing? No. It's a very generic statement, not a normative statement. Actually, we can say it is a stupid statement, which doesn't help the discussion also. But yeah, there will be always people like that. So in this case, he is also making such statement. Now read the last statement, that is Madhu. The government, main point here, the word you have to identify is ought to do. Enough. The moment you see the word ought to or should be, then automatically it is a normative statement. So Madhu gave the normative statement. So correct option is Madhu. Simple. The government ought to guarantee that our income will not fall. When somebody is giving a value state judgment, a suggestion or some opinion that is related to what should be, what ought to be, those are normative statements. So who gave that statement here? Madhu gave that statement. So 11th question answer is D, Delhi. Next, question number 12. Consider the following and decide which, if any, economy is without scarcity. Ideally speaking, we don't have to look at the options also, because there is no economy without scarcity. And the question is asking us what? Is there any economy without scarcity? It is asking. Will there be A, B, C, or even you have 400 options also? There will never be any economy without scarcity. So none of the above will be without scarcity. So every economy will be with scarcity only. So instead of reading the questions A, B, C, directly we can go to this. Only for this question, every question is a different approach. If you do this for other questions, maybe we'll fail. So you have to see this. This is absolutely not possible to have any economy which is without scarcity. So always the none of the above will be the answer for this question. However, just for conservative purposes, conservatively, let us understand why A, B, C are also wrong answers. So if at all they have to be correct, they have to be what? The economy is without scarcity. Is there a possibility? Let us check. Pre-independent India, was that without scarcity? Not possible. Mythical economy where everybody is billionaire. Is there anything like that where billionaires will be there and no scarcity will be there? Does scarcity and money have any direct relationship? No. Is economy talking about money as only the resource? No. Even billionaires will have scarcity. Mukesh Ambani also will have scarcity. Doesn't matter that the rich person does not have scarcity. Yeah, what he has scarcity for, that could be a different story. What he is having scarcity for could be different from what other people having scarcity for. But definitely scarcity is not something that is not going to hit billionaires. Even for them also there is scarcity. So we cannot say in such a mythical economy where everybody is a billionaire, there is no scarcity. So that is wrong. And the C also says where income is distributed equally among the people. Imagine, just for again theoretical purposes, a perfect socialism works. Everybody gets equal income distribution. Does it mean there is no scarcity? Absolutely there is scarcity there also. Simply speaking, even if you come out with 200, 400, 500 or 1 lakh other options also, different options for this, still the answer for this question will be none of the above only, for the simple reason there is no economy without scarcity. No, there is nothing like that. Every economy will be with scarcity only. That is the first thing we have to keep in mind and strongly understand and remember. So answer for question number 12 is D, Delhi, none of the above. That is answer for question number 12. Then moving on to question number 13. Which of the following is not, once again a negation, not a subject matter of microeconomics? Not a subject matter is asking. So we need to find out something which is macro in these 4 options. So what are those things? Let us see. First one says price of mangoes. It's only one product. Cost of producing something like a fire truck to the fire department of Delhi, only one place. We are talking about cost of some product, price of some product, quantity of the product in the mango market, only one market. And the fourth one says the national economy's annual rate of growth. So which is macro here? Is mangoes macro? No, mangoes is only limited to only one product. All these things are talking about only one thing. So A is talking about only mangoes, C is talking about only mangoes. It's only about one product, not about a country, not about a economy as a whole. Same with B also. It is talking about one product, that is fire truck. So that is not something which is macro. Those are micro. Which is not a subject matter of micro. That is broader annual thing. That is the national economy's annual growth rate. That is a macro thing, which is not a subject matter of microeconomics. So the answer for 13th question is once again D, Delhi. Next. Question number 14. The branch of economic theory that deals with the problem of allocation of resources. When we talk about allocation of resources, which branch of economic theory deals with that? That is dealt by microeconomic theory. That is what the branch of economics which deals with the allocation of resources. That is microeconomic theory. Of course, this 14th question could be a debatable question. I would personally say that such type of questions should not be given, because there are parts of microeconomic theory also which talk about allocation, parts of macroeconomic theory also which talk about allocation. So purely we cannot say micro also, purely we cannot say macro also. If there is an option of both A and B, then that would be correct, since it is not there. Majorly the allocation of resources happen through the microeconomic theory, because why the allocation of resources is happening means at what level it is happening. It is happening at individuals and organizational levels, and those are using the resources and according to the demand and supply, demand theory, supply theory, all these things are part of what? Microeconomic theory. That is why allocation of the resources majorly is addressed in the microeconomic theory. So answer is A for 14th question. Then question number 15. Which of the following is not a subject? Not, always identify the negation very clearly. Not a subject matter of business economics, he says. What is not a subject matter of business economics? Read through that. Should our firm be in the business? Of course, it is a subject matter of business economics. How much should be produced and at what price should be kept? Of course, it is a subject matter of business economics. How will the product be placed in the market? That is also a subject matter of business economics. How should we decrease unemployment in the economy? Does business economics talk about that? Absolutely no. That is what is dealt with in macroeconomics. That is a macroeconomic item, because the word used here, main thing is unemployment. So these are the key words that we should identify, and then which will give us why it is a correct answer or a wrong answer. Unemployment is the word which is used in macroeconomics. It cannot be dealt with in business economics. Business economics talks about one individual business, a product, price, cost, demand, supply, same things that we have in syllabus. Those areas, those topics are all part of business economics. Unemployment, inflation, interest rates, tax rates, fiscal policy, monetary policy, government decisions, government policy, all these things are macroeconomic things, nothing to do with business economics. So correct option for question number 15 also is D, Delhi. Next. Question number 16. Which of the following is a normative economic statement? Once again, already the theory we know. Let us see that once again, one by one. Unemployment rate decreases with industrialization. Standard statement. Economics is a social science that studies human behavior. Standard statement. The minimum wage should be. The moment should be is there, automatically that becomes normative statement. So the minimum wages should be raised by 200 per day. Whoever says that, that is his judgment. That is his value proposition. He is talking about that as an opinion. There is no rule like that. So that is a individual judgment of a person. So that is a normative statement. Others are all positive statement, which are facts, or which are just giving some generic statements, not any judgments. So correct option for question number 16 is C. Same way, question number 17. Which of the following would be considered as a topic of study in macroeconomics once again. So what is the macroeconomics things we are talking about? That also we have to look at. So same way, keywords is enough. We don't need the entire sentence. The effect of increase in wages, profitability of cotton industry is only one industry part of macroeconomics. Generally, no, it is the entire country. So let us wait for other options. Steel prices. Price is something that is a point of demand supply, which is a microeconomic concept. The C point says the effect of increasing inflation. We got our word. Inflation, we see the word automatically, that is macroeconomics. Unemployment, inflation, interest rates, tax rates, foreign exchange rates, all these things are macroeconomic things. So when we read that theory carefully, we can understand these words automatically are indicating macroeconomics. So correct option here is C. That's it. That is a topic of study of macroeconomics. All others, if you see, those are all having just only few things, not a broader things. Only wages here, price, right? Here also price. We are talking about basic things which are micro items in the other three options. But whereas only in option C, we are talking about inflation, which is a macro economic concept. So correct option for question number 17 is option C. Then question number 18. Difference between positive and normative economics is, once again, it is about what is the basic definition of positive economics and normative economics. Read them carefully, then only you can answer the question correctly. Positive economics explains the performance of economy, where normative economics finds out the reasons for poor performance. Is it so? Is it what is going to happen in positive and normative? Definitely no. Normative economics does not find reasons and all. That is a nonsensical statement. Option B. Positive economics describes the facts of the economy, while the normative economics involves evaluating whether some of them are good or bad for the welfare of the people. Normative economics talks about welfare of the people. So we got both our words, important words, which describe positive and normative. So automatically correct option is B, Bombay. Simple words will give us the answer. Remaining things are all just filling the meat of the sentence. Identifying those words is important in answering the questions. When we talk about facts, that is about positive economics. When we are talking about alternatives, evaluating judgment. Evaluation means judgment. When there is a judgment involved, whether it is good or bad for the welfare of the people. Welfare is the word which is used for normative economics. So that is why that is the correct option. C says reverse, which is definitely not correct option. So what point number C says? Positive economics is involving whether it is good or bad for welfare of the people. No, positive economics never talks about welfare of the people. Where the positive economic fourth option says prescribes, normative economic describes. Is it correct? Option D. No, sir. It is exactly the opposite. This is the opposite, really. So exactly the opposite would have been correct. Positive economics describes, normative economics prescribes. So D is also not a correct option. Only correct option is B. That is, positive economics describes the facts of some of the things related to the economy, while the normative economics decides or talks about whether they are good or bad for the welfare of the people. So correct option is B, Bombay, for question number 18. Then question number 19, direct question once again. Which of the following is not within the scope of business economics? Not within the scope of business economics. Capital budgeting, was it there? You have to remember the other disciplines which are part of business economics. Was it there, capital budgeting? Yes. Risk analysis was there? Yes. Business cycles was there? Yes. Accounting standards are there? No, sir. Accounting standards are not part of business economics. They have nothing to do with business economics. So the correct option for question number 19 is D, Delhi. Once again. Question number 20. Which of the following statements is incorrect? Read the question always carefully and identify what we want here in the options. We want to find out a incorrect statement, not a correct statement. We want to find out a false statement. So the statement should be a wrong statement. That's what we should find out. Let us see them. A says business economics is a normative in nature. Is it? To some extent, yes. Business economics has a close connection with statistics. Is it? Yes. To some extent, yes. And C question says business economists need not worry about macro variables. Is it true? No. You cannot say completely he will not worry about macro variables. That would be wrong. Why? Because business economist also should consider macro variables. It is basically microeconomic principles, but applying them in a macro environment. So you cannot say I will ignore macro variables. That is wrong. So C is incorrect statement. We got it. Can business economics be called managerial economics? Yes. So D is not a correct option. For 20th question, correct option is C. That's it. 21st question. Economic goods are considered scarce resources. Why? Why they are scarce? Why they are scarce? Let us see that one by one. They cannot be increased in quantity. Is that because of which they are scarce? No, we cannot say. Are they scarce because of this? Yes. They do not exist in adequate quantity to satisfy the requirements of the society. They are there, but definitely they will be insufficient in satisfying the requirements of the society. That's what scarcity means. It is not about they cannot be increased in quantity, and it is not about they are only important in satisfying the social requirements. They are important, but that is not because of which they are scarce. Food is important does not mean food is always scarce. So importance and scarcity are not directly related with each other all the times. But when we say requirements are more but not adequate quantity of resources is available, that's what we call them as scarcity. So correct option for 21st question is B, Bombay. And D is absolutely wrong, because we are not talking about only man-made goods. Scarcity applies to man-made goods also, and even natural resources also. So it cannot be said that they are only scarcity is limited to man-made goods. That is a wrong statement. So correct answer is B, Bombay for 21st question. Then 22nd question, in a free market economy. Free market economy once again means capitalist economy. The allocation of resources is determined by whom? Ultimately, the allocation of resources is determined by the consumer preferences. So correct option for the question number 22 or 22nd question is C. That is consumer preferences. That happens in the free market economy. Voting, nobody is going to do voting and all in this case. Central planning authority, wrong. Level of profits also is wrong. Consumers, whatever they want, that's what the market will produce. So consumers are the king. Consumer sovereignty is alive here. Whatever consumers prefer, that's what market will try to provide them. So obviously the correct option for question number 22 is C. Direct question. Once again, 23rd is a direct question. A capitalist economy uses dash as the principal means of allocating resources. Demand is also correct. Actually, supply is also correct, but you cannot use them. Why? Because when demand and supply both are there, A also alone cannot be a correct answer, B also alone cannot be a correct answer. Both put together, what will be the correct answer? That is prices. So 23rd question, correct option will be D, Delhi. And that's what we used to call that as price mechanism. Price mechanism happens through demand and supply only. But can we say only demand is correct? No. Can we say only supply is correct? No. So A, B are not alone correct. That is why they cannot be put as correct answers. Correct answer will be D, Delhi. That is prices, which is used for the purpose of allocating resources in a capitalist economy. Then question number 24 asks about this. Which of the following is considered as a disadvantage of allocating resources using the market system? So we want to find out a disadvantage of market system. Market system means capitalism. So one of them we have to find out which is a disadvantage of capitalism. If we read the advantages, disadvantages of capitalism, we should be able to simply identify what is a disadvantage. First, income will tend to be unevenly distributed. Of course, yes, that itself is a disadvantage. Directly we got it for the first option itself. 24th question, first option itself is correct. It is a disadvantage. But let us make sure others are not disadvantages. People do not get goods of their choice, wrong. They do get goods of their choice in market system. Men of initiative and enterprise are not rewarded, wrong. Once again, they are rewarded. Profits will tend to be low, nobody can say. See, profits have nothing to do with the system. Profits could be high, low, depending upon the performance of an organization, nothing to do with the system. So D is a unnecessary stupid option, so nothing to worry about it. So B and C are definitely wrong statements. The only correct statement is A, which is a disadvantage of market system, because income is unevenly distributed. Income inequalities will be more in market economy. That is why the option A is correct for question number 24. Then question number 25. Which of the following statements does not, negation once again, does not apply to a market economy. Once again, market economy, capitalist economy, laissez-faire economy, open market economy, all these things are same. Does not apply in it. Understand one by one. A. Firms decide whom to hire and what to produce. Of course, yes. So can we say it is the correct answer? No. Because we want something which does not apply to a market economy. Will firms aim at maximizing profits in market economy? Yes. So it is not our correct answer. C. Households decide which firms to work for and what to buy with their incomes. Yes. Of course, yes. So that also is not a correct answer. Government policies are the primary forces that guide the decisions of firms and households. No, sir. No. This happens where? This happens in socialism, not in market economy. So which of the following statements is not applicable to market economy? That is statement D, Delhi. Government policies are primary forces that guide the decisions of the firms and households. That is wrong. That does not apply to market economy. So answer for question number 25 is D, Delhi. Question number 26. In a mixed economy, this is a mixed economy, there is nothing special. There will be always both, partly this, partly that. So straight answer. Economic decisions are partly taken by state, partly by the private enterprise. So we cannot say A is also correct, we cannot say B is also correct. Both will be there. That's why we call it as a mixed economy. Nothing new to discover there. The mixed itself means partly this, partly that. So C is the correct option for question number 26. Question number 27. The central problem in economics is that of comparing the success of command versus market economics. No, that is not the problem. Guaranteeing the production occurs in the most efficient manner. Definitely not. Guaranteeing a minimum level of income for every citizen. No, that is not a central economic problem. So basically the problem is this. Again, 27th question. Answer is D. Allocating the scarce resources in such a manner that society's unlimited needs or wants are satisfied in the best possible manner. So always the scarcity, always the scarce resources have to be utilized. We are talking about them here. Scarce resources are going to be utilized for what? For satisfying the unlimited needs and wants of the society. That's what economics is all about. How to match these two things, how these two can be balanced is the central economic problem. So that's what we're talking about here as central economic problem. So question number 27, D is the correct answer. Then question number 28. Capital intensive technique will be chosen where? Naturally when the capital is in surplus. Simple, no? Capital surplus economy where the relative price of the capital is lower. That is where the capital intensive technique will be used. Labor intensive technique will be used in those economies where labor surplus economy is there, where the relative price of labor is lower, not capital is lower. So capital surplus economy will use capital intensive techniques. Labor surplus economies will use labor intensive techniques. Since this question is asking about capital intensive technique, correct option will be B, Bombay. That is question number 28. Then option is B. Question number 29. Which of the following is not one of the four central questions and that the study of economics is supposed to answer? So one odd man out you have to remove. What is that? Let us see. Who produces what? When are goods produced? Who consumes what? How are goods produced? What is not relevant here? If you remember the four questions, that is different. When are goods produced is not there in central economic questions. Who produces what is there. That is definitely there. Who consumes what? For whom the goods are to be produced. How the goods are to be produced. All these things are there. But when they are to be produced, that is not a central economic question. So that is why odd man out here is B, Bombay. That is answer for question number 29. Then 30th question. The large production of dash goods would lead to a higher production in future. So now if you produce more capital goods, that will lead to a higher production in future. If you produce more consumer goods now, they will be consumed. Now people will just use them, eat them, and they will be over. Agricultural goods also people will consume them and they will be over. But if you produce capital goods, let us say if you produce machinery now, that machinery will be resulted in higher production in future because that machinery will be used for further production in future. Capital goods are not finally used by the consumers. They are used by the other businesses for further production. So in future, if at all production has to be higher, if at all, then what we have to produce now, that has to be capital goods. That is the difference between capital goods and consumer goods. Capital goods are going to add to the higher production in future. Consumer goods will be consumed now. So current consumption is done for what? Consumer goods and agricultural goods. See, public goods is something different that has a different theory altogether. That has nothing to do with production and all. These are welfare goods, public goods, for example, health, education, safety, security, law and order, etc. Those are all called public goods. That has nothing to do with higher production directly. So the correct option will be B, capital goods, Bombay. That is the correct option for question number 30. Then we have question number 31. The economic system in which all the means of production are owned and controlled by private individuals for profit. So in which system private individuals own the means of production for profit? Simply capitalism, direct question. That is capitalism, no? So B, Bombay is the correct option. Question number 32. Macroeconomics is the study of what? That is the study of national economy and global economy as a whole. It is not about scarcity, it is not about businesses, it is not about individuals or businesses and people, what type of decisions they take. That is not macroeconomics. We talk macroeconomics always about country or the world as a whole. That's what is macroeconomics. So correct option for 32nd question would be B, Bombay. Question number 33. Freedom of choice is the advantage. Choice will be where? Freedom of choice will be there in capitalism, not in socialism or communism. So that is the advantage of capitalism, direct question. Question number 34. Exploitation and inequality are minimum, less. Under where? Under socialism. So 34th question, answer is A. That is where the exploitation and inequality are minimum. Then administered prices refer to what? The prices determined by forces of demand and supply? No, those are market prices. Prices determined by sellers in the market? No, definitely not. This definitely looks like the correct option. Prices determined by an external authority, which is usually the government. What it will do? It will have administered prices. Government will fix the prices, not the market. And of course, that happens in socialist economies in general. That is the answer, correct answer for question number 35. Answer is C. Clear? These are the MCQs, and the way or technique of answering the MCQs has to be done like this. I would suggest that you go through the lecture at least a couple of times and understand not only the answers but also understand the way to answer these type of questions. That will also help in answering questions in next chapters, further chapters. So we will discuss about some more aspects of economics in the coming classes definitely. But with this, we can conclude chapter number 1 in business economics. Till we meet in the next class, I take leave. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.